Well, here we are. So there you are, Victoria, looking beautiful. Welcome back here on to BeSimply and Indie Creators. I am so proud of you. We had a chat before, and we're going to be including a link to our chat previous to this moment. Now the movie's out. It's circulating worldwide, or which continents are we able to see your movie on?
Well, US and Canada today, and UK. Latin America will be a little bit later, and of course Australia, where we're out in Australia now. But let me just say, it's lovely to see you, Suzanne, and thank you so much for having me back to talk about it. I really appreciate it, and I must say I'm very interested to hear your thoughts and questions and things about the film. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we got the practicalities out of the way. Now we can dive into the sumptuousness of this film. Even from previously had not seen the movie, but the trailer alone gives you a good jolt. And what I would love to discuss with you is, because right now we're here on this moment on planet Earth, which seems to keep escalating as far as us to contemplate so much of what's included in this film, human rights, freedom, reconciliation, forgiveness, and unlikely kindness. That's unexpected. That was unexpected in the film. Kindness and love, like there's so many possibilities all in this film. For you, because we talked about it in a sense, because I hadn't seen it. Now that I've seen it, I can be a little bit more specific. For you, from the heritage and the ancestral lineage of the family, the people involved, and then your creative impetus, what aspects, I'm so curious, and I don't want to give away the story. We don't want to have a spoiler alert, but what aspects were, is it all tried and true? And then was there some of your own alchemy of how to heal such deep wounds, societal wounds woven in there?
Wow. Straight out of the gate, like the monumental question of our times.
Yeah.
There seem sort of several components to that question, and one is almost filmmaking techniques and how, to represent that visually and as an experiential part of the film. And another is like practical ways of bringing about healing between each other and within ourselves and the world that we're in. So maybe I'll just speak to that last one first, which is I do have a background in psychotherapy. So I'm very aware that the only way that we can heal our traumas or deal with our stuff is by looking at the truth of it and owning it. And in this case, in this film, our nation, Australia, has never looked hard at the truth of our history, at how the First Nations people were wiped out. I mean, we even lied and said that it was terra nullius, an empty land. There were no people here. Right. And that whole, we started like that, and that has influenced everything. It's influenced our history, the way that we've, dealt with an invisible people, to the point now where finally we're starting to see in Australia acknowledgement of the brutality of the treatment, of the dehumanization of everything, of the wiping out of this incredible, from the consciousness, not from existence, because it still exists within the people today, but within the zeitgeist of our nation, this incredible, wise consciousness built on a millennia of experience and spirituality with these people. So as part of addressing that, that's the truth telling in this film, is looking at that truth. And that's the brutal aspects that you're talking about. And only when we do that can we, walk in their shoes and just get a small sense of that experience. That opens us up to more compassion, more understanding, more just a greater ability to move forward together. And so that's the model for that, I think, in this. And in terms of the filmmaking techniques of expressing that artistically, that was very intuitively driven. And I think First Nations people, because we created this together, we had elders with us on set every day. The local First Nations people were actually in the film. They took on those parts. They're not professional actors. Some of them are. So the spirit of the land and those people, we were working with and flowing with and intuitively responding to every day that we were shooting. And that carried through into the edit as well. So, I just had my ear open for spirit talking through it and trusting that and going with that. So I think that's
so beautiful. And I loved watching the scene that you had mentioned when we spoke previously about the lightning and thunder storm that was felt like a relay response. Like you couldn't have asked for a better special effects than the ecosystem.
Yeah, well, there's so much is nature driven in the film. Like those that I really wanted to have that spirit world representation. And I didn't even know when we were shooting how that was going to work or how that was going to be, but I just trusted it would emerge, which sounds crazy. Like filmmakers would just be going, oh my gosh, why would you risk that? But I trusted and believe, and I felt like all along this has been a really protected project, a protected film, and we are the ones who are lucky enough to hold it. And so I trusted that. And then that fog emerged. We were all set to do one of our big shootouts, set pieces, like 3-day shoot. We all turn up and time was tight and there was virtually no money really. And it was just so high pressure. And we all get up there, and where you would never, ever have fog, it is so dense and thick, you can't see 6 feet in front of you. And of course that caused a meltdown for the first AD and everyone. But then I just realized, actually, this is our gift from the land to go, here's your spirit world. So then it was like I couldn't get actors and things there quick enough to take advantage of it while I was there. And that happened all the way through. There was all kinds of natural world interactions. And I think you can feel that in the film.
Absolutely. And as you were speaking earlier, it felt to me, and watching the movie, just digesting the nature of it, for the viewers, anyone that lives anywhere in the world, there's been Indigenous people before us that are here right now. And so just feeling almost like everyone just wanted love. Like, even though there were atrocities being committed, it seemed even in the atrocities that those people were just wanting love, in a certain respect, that they'd, and if we think about it in terms when people invaded lands, they'd come a long, long way to get there. It wasn't like they had an airplane to transport them, in 10 hours or 16 hours or 18 hours or whatever, that their whole life had, for all intents and purposes, maybe been left behind. So it gave me some deeper contemplations, which I really appreciate, having worked with different tribes in different locations, and then reflecting forward to our current state, because there are many places that are still objectifying humans current day for their needs, whether it's for work or relations, all different kinds of things. So you bring about maybe that if we all focused on that love thing, that maybe we could heal everything. I don't know what you feel about that, but
yeah, well, the only cure for hate is love. It's true, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad to talk about that aspect, because I've done a bit of talking about this film the past few days with the lead up to the release, and without fail, everyone focuses on the handful of brutal scenes. It's because they are hard and they're raw and they're real, and you feel like there's no escape. You're there with them, which is what I wanted, because First Nations people couldn't escape. So we should feel what that's like.
Yeah.
And, but that is quite a small percentage of the film, really. The rest of the film is talking about love and understanding, forgiveness, redemption, opening your mind, and seeing what missing out on that sort of connection and love does to people in creating those characters who are perpetrating the horrors, and then their own desire to move beyond that. So yeah, I think it's really a film about love.
Yeah, really, really well done. And, to the audience that's listening or watching this, you prefaced hang in there. Maybe because you had, and I'm like, okay. I mean, the trailer kind of gave me a jolt in anyways, but so I kind of poised myself, but I was really intrigued. So I really welcome anyone, and especially from the psycho-spiritual standpoint, anyone that's been violated on any level, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all those realms, that this is really a way to maybe confront some of those things for yourself and see where you're at in your own healing process. Because I would imagine some of the people that we're talking to might have their own personal healing to do. So it's easy to go towards the pain and suffering versus, oh, the remedy was right there too, which to me was the love.
Yeah, exactly. But I think also there is a realness to it, in that, it doesn't have a nice little wrapped up Hollywood character arc ending for Jara, our lead woman. He's kind of left at the start of what she needs to do. Yeah. But she's realized and got to the starting line. Yeah. And that is huge for humans. Yeah. And just going into what you're talking about with the people experiencing trauma, to get to that point of going, okay, it's forgiveness and love I need to embrace. To get to that point, it's such an achievement. It's
just got chills, good amount of chills there. And your lead actor, she did amazing, just taking you through all those arcs, which was pretty incredible. And I would say even some of the violent scenes that were, I don't know if we're allowed to say that word, but I'm going to say it, the rape word. I never know what we get dinged for, but anyways, that, the portrayal for a lot of people to understand, how someone copes with that happening. And, especially in those times where people were just held at the whim of others. And so they had to learn how to cope and continue to have life. Really powerful to see that. And then how do we correct that? Like I said, some of that's still going on to this day, unfortunately.
It's incredibly common. I don't think much has changed. We're just actually shining a light on it now. Yeah. And it's the same for anyone who has been violated and overpowered physically. It is that inability to escape from it. And then we see through Jara, and I might point out that it is not a graphic film at all. We actually don't see the ins and outs of the horror. It's actually it's just not being able to escape that I think is the trauma for the viewer. Yeah. And that gives you an insight into people who've experienced that. Yeah. And then how we represent that trauma playing out across her traveling through the film and the way it emerges. And it's not that is true for people who've experienced trauma. It resurfaces continually in all kinds of different ways. And I think that's something people have also commented on with the film, in that, that's all part of the hardness of watching it. But that's actually the understanding of the experience.
Yeah, and I think personally, my opinion is that you did it really beautifully. And in the scenes, the sequencings artistically with the scenes, which each character revisited a moment or a memory, which we call the modern day triggers, for this emotional affect to take over in their system, you did really beautifully. So I congratulate you for that.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. I really do.
No,
and
it really is stunning. The cinematography is just really, really, the whole thing's beautiful, but there's just this effortless flow, because it's not always easy. And maybe you can explain, I think in this day and age, people don't have as much of appreciation that it's not easy to create some of these illusions and transitions in film, where you're going from one, set and setting, and then you're going into someone's mind or memory, and then going back out into the physical without, it being clunky, or you did it really beautifully, like seamless almost in some of the scenes, right? But maybe you could explain
that's right. Well,
your creative process behind that.
I wanted you to feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the film has well, actually, I think it was described really well by Professor Jane Mills at the University of New South Wales here, who wrote just a very small paper on the film, but I just loved her take on it. And she described it as lingering dissolves that remind you that history lives within the present. And that's, I think, those transitions you're talking about, that those scenes still, they merge and blend across each other, and all of a sudden you're in that other realm. You've just traveled with it. We haven't cut you to it. And that's another thing. Kevin Scott, the DOP, and I, we're kind of obsessed with one shots and trying to do everything that we can in a single shot, because I always feel that editing and cutting, that's not life. We see the world in one shot. So if we can recreate that on the screen, then it's really more real to us, like we're in it.
Absolutely.
So, and that's part of that way of merging the worlds together. So it's like the envelopes of the human being.
Yeah, it was beautifully done, those scenes. And for I think we might have talked about this before, but for your crew, meaning the actors, but then everyone behind the scenes too, what was their process of transformation during making this film?
Well, there was a lot of process, let me tell you. It was the film from the get-go, from the moment of inception, was like directing its own charge, and it was pulling people in, and it would spit people out. It's not quite the right word, but it would cull who wasn't meant to be there, until refining right up to even during the filming, to when pivotal times would come up, something would happen and we would have to bring somebody else in, and that somebody else who came in was perfect for that moment and for what was needed. We had ceremonies. Poppy Mack, who plays Uncle Jack in the film, who's one of the local elders, he would do ceremonies fairly regularly, because things need to be addressed or cleansed, or the whole film was made it's a microcosm of what we're talking about, of that
Right.
reconciliation, of that working together, of standing together and ceremoniously dealing with our past.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's it was made like that. And
beautiful.
That's why it feels the way it does, because that spirit's alive in it.
Yeah.
And that I had to hold the line on that a couple of times, you know, because there are always the non-creative vested interests in pushing forward, which I totally understand.
Right.
But there was no way that we would move forward until we addressed what needed to be addressed spiritually, physically, mentally, and emotionally on that land.
Right. Beautiful. Well, and another thing that for the viewers that dive into this film, if you share a little bit about the call and response and the history, how much it stores, because we live in a moment in time where people can just like erase things, delete things, block people, all this stuff. But really, we're always leaving an electromagnetic resonance imprint in the land, and the land doesn't, or, you know, the earth does not erase its memory. Like maybe, you know, you do with a big mainframe computer or something. But if you can share just maybe a little glimpse of where you felt that call and response, that the earth was like, yeah, it's time you guys looked at this.
Well, I can give you a big one on that. So 90% of the landscape in the film was destroyed by fire after we finished shooting, in the massive Currowan mega fire that consumed Australia, or the east coast of Australia. And it literally came up to here in Kangaroo Valley, where I am. It took out all our shooting locations there. It took out here at our place where we shot the Papua New Guinea scenes. It went across the river and up to where the massacre happened. And it just literally, a line through Kangaroo Valley was drawn to where we shot those scenes of you know, the abuses that had occurred.
Yeah.
And it was wiped out. And I was talking with one of our elders about it in an interview, actually, when the film first came out here in Australia. And she ended up making me cry in the interview, because she said that we had unleashed and channeled out and processed this trauma that was locked in the land, and the fire was the cleansing of that trauma so that it could be born again and else, you know. And that's a really powerful thing that I'm just can't believe we got to be able to you know, be a part of that. And in this horror and this terror of the fire, there's this beauty of being born again. And so
the great purification. Well, we're grateful for you for being a conduit to that. You know, I'm deeply grateful for you being a conduit to that. You know, the more that we release that from our lands, the more we can move forward. Many don't realize that, you know, we can't keep looking the other way and not freeing things, especially in places where things might have been occurred. So
absolutely. And that's also the same for us as individuals. You know, it's the same process.
Absolutely. Wow, that's really, you had your Phoenix moment all around you.
Yes.
It's like,
it's
you know,
interesting. Look, I feel incredibly blessed that we have been able to live on this land at its height of robust biodiversity. It was like a Borneo jungle here, you know, it's just incredible. And then it was razed to the ground. It became like the surface of Mars. This was like rainforest. It became like a lunar landscape. And now it's coming back. And we've seen this huge transformation of this place we love so much. So, yeah,
and must feel different, and then, you know, the rebirth is always so beautiful.
That when birds first came back, and I can remember the first time I heard birdsong after so much deathly silence for so many months, and the joy of that bird just coming back.
It's beautiful.
Really beautiful. So fingers crossed we don't have to burn everything for more of this transformation. Maybe there's another way.
Well, you know, nature has her way in all different, you know, I think in every set and setting there's a way, you know, that's why we have the flood, we have, you know, storms, all different ways to cleanse. But yeah, just that clearing is really powerful. And then if you talk about the letting go to move forward, that was another point I felt was really well articulated in the film was, and for some people that might have been hard, like, you know, you are met with such extreme conditions and then trying to meet life in a beautiful way, you know, again, get to that love word. For you, how was that process as far as like going from deep trauma and then showing the possibility of letting go and embracing, you know, that fresh or that new beginning?
Well, again, I think our First Nations people, or let me be very specific then, the First Nations Australians that I know, and I do feel this is more general than the people that I know, but I will only speak to what I know, is their willingness to extend the hand of friendship and to move forward together and to pick us up, because they're already there.
Right.
You know, they've got that wisdom. They understand. Yes, they've experienced trauma and they might have all kinds of feelings about it, but they want to move forward in love. Yeah. So they're our teachers. They're the model for it. Right. And this film is representative of that. They're the heart of that. They're the heart of that that's in the film. Yeah. And even in that in the last card, when the film ends and we acknowledge the Yuin people here, and we say they are the beating heart of this film, and they are because of that. Well, so,
and it's interesting because if you spend time, you live in a beautifully nature-filled environment, meaning, you know, very lush. It's growing back that way, but a very lush place. In nature is like that. You know, the gazelle doesn't feel trauma the next day. It's not having to go get psychotherapy. It realized it escaped being a meal that night, but it isn't like, oh my God, I almost died, you know. So this mechanism's there. And I would say all Indigenous tribes that I've had the great fortune to sit with, that's very much, they're attuned to that. So there's a lot more joy and levity. It's not like we don't have to carry all that on our back, you know.
Yeah. So let's learn from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's learn and let's move forward.
And this film, it does attract a lot of hate too, because of that, I think. And people are so in resistance to that. Yeah.
And from your perspective, what would you say is the biggest point to get, you know, because we're walking through an era where people are very attached to even their ancestors, I don't know, like they're attached to it in a way as if it was theirs, which from a reincarnation model very well could be, but they might have been wearing a shoe that they don't want to, you know, brag about in that past history. Where do you feel is that threshold where we can encourage our fellow humanity to stop being so offended by the history, but help us heal and move beyond it?
I imagine you'd have to just do that on an individual level and look within yourself and ask yourself, why am I so in resistance or reaction to this? Why is this triggering this in me? And have a really honest, open communication with yourself and look at it. Talk to other people about it. Start talking about it. It's okay to be in reaction to something. But the problem comes when that's not communicated and the reaction is just driving the action.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, it's
or resisting.
Let's start talking about that.
Yeah, resisting engagement.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And anytime you're resisting or driving or reacting in those ways, you can bet your bottom dollar you are not having a happy life.
Yeah.
Within that. Because it's not a great feeling space to be in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so save your own life by addressing it and embracing more of that compassion and understanding and forgiveness of your own self, because you're the one doing it to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Aho. Yeah.
And that's what Jara realizes in the film, that she has become that evil and she's doing it to herself.
Yep.
And her life will only be saved by changing that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And that was that profound, you wove it in so beautifully of these layers of, that we all have it in us to go to places that we never think we could go to it, depending on the setting and the scenarios that our lives hand us. But yeah, you really, brought it together nicely. And then what was your response from the elders and the indigenous that you worked with on the film?
They love it.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been finished until they loved it.
Yeah.
It needs to be what they want to have. And I will say that, as much as I, on a daily basis, would talk to them about what we were doing and how far to go. And generally, I always went with what they wanted, but they wanted to go even harder than this film, and I just couldn't go extra. I mean, I would have loved to actually go, really, the gloves are off, this is true history, but we would never even get an audience member for that. So we have to do these baby steps of
course. And you did do it rather beautifully. So anyone that's listening to this that might have trauma that they haven't completely healed, it's definitely, you can meet it and not feel overwhelmed, I feel, from watching it. So I think that's good. And most people don't understand that, or remember, or know, or maybe haven't studied that Native cultures sometimes are quite brutal themselves, and how they, even if you study the Native American tribes here, there's some really warrior tribes that if you come intruding, they will meet you in a way that's not so pleasant. So, it's just to understand, I think, human nature of, how we protect that which we love, or the land that we want. And then how can we be civil with one another? I don't know that we need to repeat so much extreme violence to get our point across anymore. So
we get to do it in film.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's more ceremonial. It can be more ceremonial, representational than actual.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have enough lineage to heal, so we can have more films like yours to help us, heal and free our ancestors and free ourselves, so we can move forward in that space. Like I said, I felt like everyone just wanted love, no matter what role they were in.
They all did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And the curious part, did the from talking and get the feed in from the pass down of the stories and stuff, because obviously this is a period piece too. Did they have that sentiment that, because I know when I was out at Hopi once, they were saying they'd never seen anyone disrespect the feminine the way they did. And this would be to the Spaniards, no offense to the Spanish people that are living here, but that they invaded their space and really, violated the women, and that's not even a part of their culture. So did they share with you any of some of those things about what had been communicated to them about the history.
Do you mean the actual history of
well, like just how
family?
I mean, just that sentiment, like our culture would never like rape a woman or treat her that way with disrespect. I mean, for like Hopi Nation, that was foreign to them, to have people come in and steal their children and steal the women and rape them. They didn't know what that was. It would be like, you know, a foreign concept that you've never seen before. I'm just curious if that was for them too, like I think, that they were being shown things that they had never seen before. Yeah.
I think, well, yes. But I also think there is, like you were talking about, a lot of brutality that exists within First Nations tribes of their own sort of stuff. So, no, I don't want to glamorize First Nations people as somehow being beyond where humans are.
Yeah, you know, I was just curious because what their traditions are, because
they were. And plus, I always feel I feel like I need to have a First Nations person sit beside me and answer this question. So, you know, you're just getting a white woman's understanding from what I've gathered rather than from the horse's mouth. So,
of course.
But I will say that the Australian First Nations tribes had evolved socially and culturally to a point where there was very little in the way of violence or warring or any of that. It was ceremoniously handled. So if there was a dispute, it would be sorted out in ceremony. So I think that there was such an enlightened cultural world that they were living in. That was so far from this. I mean, we're descended from the Vikings who came in and butchered and tortured everyone and everything. Like, it lives in our psyche as white people. We are generations of brutality that's slowly distilling out, hopefully. So we come from that space that is so different to their experience.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about, because that was like,
well, it's really more like I was really within the film trying to express that through the Mackay family lineage and how it is generations of brutality built on brutality that winds up with these really dysfunctional human beings.
Right.
And so
we need to go do some films over there, because that might free a lot of that, the just how we teach, because in most societies, like traditional tribal societies, they have ways of teaching and raising their young, and it's not so big. You have communities that are relatively small systems, and then coming across waters and intruding, you have to be prepared, I guess, for anything. So I haven't studied that so much, like as far as, what they were preparing themselves for, because it could have been all in their imagination. And then, they get there and something looks different than them and they feel like they have to attack it. So definitely not part of our true nature. I know that.
No. That's definitely a construct.
Well, I really encourage everyone to watch this, because it's worth it. And I actually want to watch it another time. So that's a good sign that you want to, someone wants to watch it again. I love a lot of the details you put in there. And I would shout out to anyone listening to this or watching that there's breaths. You give breaths in there. So to know,
and they're beautiful breaths.
It's like, okay, I can
soaring beauty.
Breaths, and realizing how we can be hasty and not stop and pause, and the unexpected comes. So you did such a great job. So I'm excited. Share with the listeners and viewers where it's streaming. Is it on, all the platforms that's available?
It's on all the platforms.
Okay, so and they can just Google it. and find it, or they can search it on their.
It's also on DVD.
Oh, perfect.
So you can watch it multiple times. You can even listen to commentary and see behind the scenes making of stuff. It's all there. So I think that's in Walmart and Amazon and.
Perfect. Well, we'll put all those links there too, so that people can grab it. And a good thing for the holidays, maybe. You know, they always say don't have like political or, you know, any kind of, I don't know, argumentative topics, but this would be a good healing topic, I think, you know.
Yeah. And there is nothing wrong. We need to celebrate robust discussion and looking at how we feel and within the context of our relationships and each other. So if it prompts a bit of that, then that's good too. Yeah.
And if you can share a little bit from your perspective, from your perspective as a human to society, where you feel that, because you started out by saying we don't even know the history, you know, do you think we're ready to see the history? Like in making this film, do you think we're ready or partially ready? Some of us ready?
Australia's not that ready.
Yeah.
There's a percentage of Australians who are ready and who want it, and I'm pretty sure First Nations people are very keen on it, but the establishment is not so keen on it. And I would say honestly, I've had way more just wonderful conversations like this one in the States and the UK with you know, reviewers or interviewers talking about this film than I ever did in Australia, because I think it's just a bit too close to home. And particularly the US is way ahead of us in terms of race relations, even though you might not think that with everything that's going on there. But there's so much more of a willingness to look than I would say definitely there's more of an awareness and a conversation. I don't know that people fully understand it, like they haven't fully looked at it. It's more of kind of like seated at this point, and that's why I asked the question, like looking at, I mean, just for instance, one of the states in North America, Arizona, they had over 200 tribes 100 years ago, and now they have probably a handful. And that all those tribes were killed. So they didn't just die of natural causes, you know? And so those kind of facts are staggering, because then you're like, oh, you know, that's not that long ago. If you think about it, you know, 100 years isn't really that long. And then what exactly happened? Why did we do that? You know? So these are things for us to examine. And I think they can help us make future choices, because sometimes we make these overarching decisions like, oh, something doesn't belong anymore, so we're going to just get rid of it, versus, you know, embracing, like you said, they have the answer, you know, for all of us, the medicine for us. So. Yeah. Well, so often I hear people say, oh, you know, I want to move us beyond black and white to a world where it's all gray and, you know, everything's mixed in. And I don't like the thought of that at all. Why can't we be individual and different and embrace the difference and enjoy the difference? Why can't we do that? That seems better to me. Well, coming from I love cultures and traveling, and I don't want us to be all a hodgepodge of one thing. I mean, I don't want us to be all the same. That's not very interesting. You know, no, it's not. So, well, I appreciate you creating this film. We're gonna put it out there in a lot of fun ways, and I'll send you the links as they're available in the next probably 12 hours to send it out and have a big celebration that you're out and live. And have you been doing submissions to film festivals that people can look out for? No, I think, well, it's sort of out of our hands. The distributors have it, and they kind of decide that. Okay. they decide all of that. I think there might be a New York thing on the cards, but yeah, I think also film festivals have copped such a beating with COVID.
Yeah. Well,
think,
yeah, a lot of them are doing online, so you can just go ahead and watch it. But just to, I don't know, it feels like it should be in a festival though, a certain one. But we'll see.
Yes.
Just the accolades, you know, accolades are important when you put forth a lot of effort, you know. But well done.
We are. Thank you. Yeah, we are in the Sao Paulo International Film Festival, which is quite a big one, big deal apparently for first feature competition. So that's good. We'll see how we go there.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, keep us posted. And I'd love if you can send me the link to the article that was written by the professor, if that's a public.
Oh, I'll just send it to you.
Okay, perfect. And I would like to include it. So
yeah. It's a fantastic piece. It's just a one pager, but it just hits all the notes. It was sort of like, so she really gets where I was coming from. It's nice. It's great when you talk to people who get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's good. You know, you'll have those people. So, well, keep us posted, and you guys stay like well and free down there. And know that here in North America, many places we've been rooting on all levels for Australia. So
well, that's lovely. Well, you're kind of like our big mother over there, so
well, and I don't know, you know, it's hard to know in these moments. You and I are talking, but we don't know how much is communicated these days, like through social media ends and stuff like that. But I just want to let you know that people are really concerned about Australia right now and New Zealand, and championing for you guys. So
thank you, Suzanne, and an absolute delight to talk about all of this. Thanks for your very great questions. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you for the great work, and I'm looking forward to watching it again. All right.
Yeah, it is a film you can watch many times.
Yeah, so juicy. So all right, well, you have a beautiful day. Enjoy your day, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you. Bye-bye.